all these attorneys.
Good evening, everyone. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene's YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pocket as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and comment on agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. The minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or turn your microphone on. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. A couple of things tonight. I wanted to just open by welcoming Councillor Williams and Councillor Haas to the table for PLD tonight. This is Councillor Haas's first committee meeting with us here at PLD, and Councillor Williams as well, who's been serving with our MSFI committee. So we're really excited to have you both here. And I also want to offer everyone a reminder that the public hearing was held on Ordinance O-2023-16-A, and therefore no further public comments will be accepted on this matter when it comes to the discussion tonight. This is a part of our process that allows this committee, after hearing all of the testimony that's been before us, to really have an opportunity to discuss what we've heard and what our thoughts are in a public setting, but to offer up some sort of recommendation to the full council. And we are limiting that further public comment at this point. So I'm going to jump right in and get started on my interpretation of what I've seen, and I'll be looking to everybody here at the committee to add in their perspectives as well. But what has occurred to me over the course of the last couple of months since we've gone through joint committee and through our public hearing process is that there seem to be quite a few questions that keep coming up that aren't necessarily answered in the context of the ordinance that's been put before us yet. There are, I've spoken with our city attorney. There are questions in regards to restrictions that could be placed on size limitations and what further zones might we consider to allow a casino or to deny casinos or charitable gaming facilities license to have access to. And I keep hearing about maybe some planning board regulations that could be addressed and what constitutes planning board scope and what constitutes the council scope and what we can put in these ordinances. And those are not all things that we need to debate tonight, but it just makes me feel like this version of this ordinance is not ready for me to commit to and support in full. I do think that there's a large part of this that I'm in favor of and I will support eventually, but I think it needs some tuning up. So I'm not sure if anyone else at the table wants to jump in with their opinions. Councillor Haas?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
Thank you, Chair. A question for the city attorney, I guess. What this ordinance does is just defines charitable gaming for adoption into our codes, but it doesn't determine where it can be deployed or how it can be deployed or what use standards might wrap around or anything else. It's just that we're getting the definition in there.
So,
not exactly, Councillor. There are two things. There is a definition, and that's Ordinance 17A. But 16A is the amendment to the zoning ordinance, which both includes the definition, but also states where in the city they would be permitted. Remembering that our zoning ordinance is what's called a permissive ordinance, So a use has to be specifically stated to be permitted, and if it's not stated, then it's by definition not allowed. So it's doing two things.
So it does both of those things at the same time, we don't separate the definition from the statement of how it can be deployed.
Well, again, there are two parts. 16A includes both the definitional language and also the locations where they would be permitted. 17A is the definition that would be then inserted into the definitional section of the land use code, which is not technically part of the zoning ordinance.
So, Counselor, if you look at our agenda this evening, you'll see that there are actually two items before us that have similar headings. One is the zoning ordinance, and the second one will be the definition. So this one that we're talking about right now is that meat and potatoes.
Okay, I'll listen for a moment.
And my suggestion on that, I think, is because they're so intertwined, you should just deal with them together. I think there is a suggested motion on 17A to, it has been on more time to just essentially keep it on more time until you're finished with this process.
Great. Anyone else? Counselor Williams?
I am generally supportive of this, but one of my quibbles is that we call it a charitable gaming facility, which is a bit of a euphemism. I think charitable gambling facility would be more appropriate. Gaming encompasses a lot of things. My son spends a lot of time gaming on his Nintendo. Gaming is not of the essence of what this is. What the essence is that bets are being placed, and that's definitionally gambling. So if this does go back for more discussion, I hope that can at least be considered, renaming it to be a charitable gambling facility.
I would ask the city attorney, is that definition in line with the licensure from the state? Is that what we chose that?
That's the statutory language that's used, charitable gaming facility, and that's how the license is issued from the state.
So is it prudent for us to keep that, or is it
I would
possible
suggest
for-
that you keep that.
Keep that.
No, with all due respect to Counselor Williams, I get his point.
Although very well noted, I agree. Yes, I have a son at home that is a gamer, for sure. And there's no betting happening at all in that scenario. Counselor Ormerod?
Thank you. It's also true that for the last 25 years, the industry has identified as gaming and not gambling. So if you go search out that, and you'll see all the annual reports of all the companies that are in the industry, you look at the industry association, yeah, they use the euphemism, they call it gaming.
So the other thing that I do want to just address with the committee as a personal opinion is that I think we heard a lot of testimony at the public hearing in regards to a potential applicant for this use and how their personal feelings were in regards to that. And what I would challenge the committee to keep in mind is that outside of any potential applicant, we already have a charitable gaming facility license issued in the municipality, and those licenses are tied to the municipality. So at any point, for me, I think in where I would prefer to see this head toward, a lot of that comes from my concerns about the already licensed facility in this community. And what we heard was that these things never get smaller, that they tend to get bigger, and that this facility right now could be potentially looking to move or grow. And I think that it's our job to really think about where in this community would you want to see a sizable charitable gaming facility. And me personally, I don't think that even the downtown transition district is appropriate for that. And I think that we have some other zoning districts that might be more appropriate, and I think we need to look at, size matters. What size of a facility would you want to see in a more centralized area? What size facility would you want to see pushed out to the outskirts? And that whole conversation needs to happen in a workshop process back at the Joint Committee. And so I'm hoping that at the end of our conversation tonight, you guys would agree that this needs a little more work. Anyone else? Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Chair. The new guy will mix things up here with lack of knowledge. I fully support the idea of having just about any commercial occupancy in all of the city and having it where it's appropriate, but it has to be accompanied by use standards and how it can exist in that environment. So this is not charitable gaming will enter our ordinances at some point in some form that it should be defined in there. And then, but before we allow it in the land development code, we have to have use standards built up around it. So I'm still not quite grasping how this is separate in either of these. I know in 16A, it's combined. In 17A, it's just the definition. It's not combined.
So there are two separate places in our city's code or.
Land use code,
There's a land use code and then there's
the zoning
the
ordinance.
zoning ordinance. And those are two separate documents. And so when you update one, you have to update the other. But you cannot update the zoning without the land use code being completed. So, and you also, and vice versa, you couldn't have something in the land use code that doesn't ultimately have a definition in the zoning code. So we are put in a position where at some point, if we adopt an ordinance, we have to put a definition into the zoning, but we cannot do that before we adopt.
So we have to do both of them simultaneously, or at least develop use and standards, and then it's easy to bring the definition in.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's a good summary.
Yes.
The two are the same but different. They are connected through the land development code. Everything for the city sits in the land development code, but the land development code is broken up into parts. One of those parts is the zoning ordinance, and there's a process for amending the zoning ordinance. Parts that are not in the zoning ordinance go through the regular ordinance amendment process. But because these two are so intertwined, they really need to be dealt with together.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone on this side? Counselor Jones?
I think everyone already knows how I feel about this ordinance. I think we're getting too much into the weeds here. I've been opposed to this ordinance from the very beginning. Our master plan calls for us to have an energetic, vibrant downtown, but yet we're starting to pick and choose which kind of uses can go down there, which could have added to being an energetic, vibrant downtown. So that being said, as I was from the very beginning, I'm opposed to this change of use in this ordinance.
So Counselor, would you be opposed to it going back to joint committee to maybe create a little bit of some more conversation and some more definition around what the council might be willing to adopt in general? Or would you like
The
to see it
answer-
move forward?
The answer is, if I have a choice, yes, I would go for that. But I would prefer that we move against the adoption.
Understood. Counselor Ormerod?
Yes, this is a question of where this would fall. When I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the knowledge of how, on the parking section, like how long we expect cars at a charitable gaming to be in the parking lot, what the turnover rate is, and how long that is, and how big it would have to be, and how large it would have to be a profitable venture. Are those considerations in the zoning or the land use code?
The sort of general answer to that question with respect to this specific use is no. However, there are site plan regulations, and the community development director is here. Try not to get too deep into those. There are site plan regulations that the planning board has adopted that would apply to, commercial use. But we have not implemented, as some other cities have, specific site plan regulations that could apply to this kind of use. That has not occurred yet. And that frankly is a process that would be run through the zoning, I'm sorry, through the planning board
So-
as well.
Would we have any authority to ask them to define this outside of their normal site plan
Well,
regulations?
no, it would be within the site plan regulations.
I'm sorry, because you said they have already current commercial site plan
They have
regulations?
site plan regulations that would apply.
Would apply, could we recommend that they adopt additional
Yes,
for this particular use?
Sure.
If we wanted to
yes,
make those more stringent?
yes. And frankly, that could be something that would be discussed at the joint committee. Because remember, one of the other boards at the joint committee is the planning board.
Great. Anyone else? Counselor Williams?
Just to say that I think sending it back to the planning committee is a good idea, so with your permission, I'll make a motion.
Please.
All right. Move to refer ordinance O 2023-16A back to the Joint Planning Board and Planning Licenses and Development Committee for further consideration.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Williams, second by Counselor Ormerod, or is that Counselor Haas? I was not looking that way.
I think it was me this time.
Counselor
It was.
Ormerod. Thank you. And do we have any discussion on the motion? Counselor Jones?
Thank you. Just to get my opinion on the record, I would like to make an amendment, and I would move that the PLD recommend against the adoption of ordinance 0223-16A.
Do I have a second?
It dies for lack of a second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's how that's done.
So
I just
with-
wanted to get that on record.
I understood. So without the amendment failing, we go back to our original motion. Yes, Counselor Haas?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Just to reiterate and state my position, I'm fully in agreement with Councilor Jones on the idea that we should be open to all kinds of occupancies, but we need to do it in the proper manner where we have use standards written so we're able to apply it across the board when the time comes. So on that basis, I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Counselor Haas. All right, any other conversation regarding the motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous tonight. So this does not end here. It will have to go in front of the full council next week, and this will be the committee's recommendation, and hopefully the council will support that. We would be looking at, the potential process would look something like a conversation at joint committee outlining what we would like to see in a B draft version of this ordinance, and then it would have to go through all of the original processes. So I'm going to move on to our next item, which now appears. Oh, yes, so along with this ordinance, we did receive several communications. At this point, it looks like there were 4 of them. Should I read them into the record?
You don't have to
I-
read them in the record.
Okay.
It's up to the chair.
Okay, so we're just gonna, we have communication from a Bridget Hansel, we have a communication from a Jocelyn Kimball Frank, communication from a Camille Helminski, and a communication from Judy and Jim Putnam. All of those communications, I'll be making a motion to file into the record.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that? Counselor Williams?
Just to note that all those communications were in support of the ordinance.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So item 2 on our agenda this evening is that definition, and as we discussed, we don't have a position where we can really make a recommendation on this until the full ordinance finds its way back through joint committee at this point. So I would be looking for a motion, Counselor Jones.
You wanted more time or send it to
More
joint
time,
committee?
please.
I would move that we recommend ordinance 02023-17-A be put on more time.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, second by Counselor Ormerod. Do we have any questions about that? Counselor Williams?
If we're sending the other one back to committee, why aren't we sending this one with it in case they both need to be changed?
So the process for updating the zoning ordinance is different than the process for updating the land use code, which you will become very familiar with as we work through the year. And I'm not gonna attempt to muddy the water, so I'm just gonna let the attorney explain the difference for the two of them, and it'll make a little more sense.
As we've talked about, the land use code in general is an ordinance, and part of that ordinance is the zoning ordinance. So the zoning ordinance under the law has a different process to amend rather than ordinances in general. But because these two are so intertwined, the reality is that at the joint committee, it will be impossible not to talk about 17A, because 17A, the definition, is also included in 16A. It's just that the joint committee doesn't itself deal with that 17A, because it's not in the zoning ordinance.
So when we go to joint committee, as the PLD committee, we go there in collaboration with the planning board. There are decisions that our committee will make as recommendations for full council, and then there are decisions that the planning board needs to also make in order for an ordinance to move forward. If for some reason these two groups did not agree, then it would stall the entire process, and we would be going back and starting again from scratch. And the joint committee process itself helps alleviate some of that from potentially happening. But the zoning ordinance does not require the planning board to have a say in any portion of its amendments. So we don't have to send it there in order to get their take on it.
And Madam Chair, just to give some comfort level to Councillor Williams, I mean, ultimately, assuming that they both move forward in some iteration, ultimately 17A will be back in front of you.
Yes.
And you will have an opportunity, if it needs to be conformed to 16A, you can do that at that point.
Okay. So we have, I have to rewind to figure out where we are now. So we have a motion on the table right now to put this on more time. Councillor Haas, do you have a question on the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. No, it was sideways. It's not specifically on the motion, so
Okay.
I'll hold my question.
Thank you. All right, so seeing no more questions from the committee, all in favor? And that is unanimous. That brings us to the end of our regular agenda this evening. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad we made it through a really quick one for you guys for your first night. And we will see you guys all next week.
Welcome to PLD.